Hey there, welcome to episode 265 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is my latest Transformers purchases. Now, I buy a lot of different toy lines. Transformers is one of my favorites. But as you can sort of see, some of my collection back here, I have two very full bookshelves here with nothing but Transformers on them. And I'm specifically kind of a Generation 1 Transformers collector. So that's based on the cartoon of the 80s. And sometimes that expands out a little bit further from that, but I'm not into like Beast Wars or any of the like kind of anime inspired stuff like Armada, and I'm not into the live action movie stuff. So after having collected modern Transformers for 15 years or so now, I've got a pretty close to complete collection, I would say. Hasbro keeps releasing Bumblebees and Optimus Primes and Megatrons, but I'm not the kind of guy that feels the need to get every single one of those. I just want a really good, definitive version of that character for my shelf. And sometimes the new versions come out, they're a little bit better, but they're not better enough to warrant me spending the money to replace the ones that are in my collection. So all that is to say is I don't buy as many Transformers these days as I still do of, say, Marvel Legends, G.I. Joe Classified, things like that. But there have been some pretty cool releases lately, and they're all kind of in that G1, pretty sort of in that G1 zone, which you'll see here in a second. So yeah, I'm just going to review all of those Transformers today. And so let's start out with, there was a couple of Amazon exclusive 2-packs. They were also available exclusively like through Hasbro's website as well. But yeah, they were really cool when these were announced. And I was tempted to get both. Now these 2-packs were inspired by the IDW comic books, which have really expanded on the lore and the background of Transformers. I'm a huge fan of the IDW books, so I was interested in all these characters. However, these sets were kind of pricey. I forget what they retailed for, maybe $70, $75 or something US, but I'm Canadian, so that makes these sets about $100. Plus with shipping, it's going to be like $130 per set. And these characters are, redone versions of characters that I already have. So I really kind of had to really think, is it justifiable to spend this money? And I decided I was only going to order one of the packs. So I passed on this one. So this is a cool pack. Now, you see the box here. It has got Senator Shockwave and Clerk Orion Pax. Now, this is based on like a pre-war story from the comic books, where Shockwave, that big purple cycloptic guy that we all know, he was a senator, and this is what he looked like. He had kind of like Ultra Magnus colors with that red and blue. He had a face with a mouth and nose and eyes and everything like that. But he was actually basically tortured and stripped of his personality to kind of put him in line with the Decepticon cause. And so they made him just that kind of analytical kind of monster that we know from the Transformers, cartoon and comic books from the 80s and all that sort of stuff. So it was really kind of cool to see this backstory of him. And yeah, it's a cool figure. It's based on the Seeker mold. It's quite drastically retooled, but you can kind of tell it's based on that, Siege Starscream. Anyway, then the other character there is Orion Pax. I assume most of you guys are familiar with him. That is Optimus Prime before he was given the Matrix of Leadership. So depending on what history you're looking at, whether it's the old cartoon or the comic books from Dreamwave or the comic books from IDW, Orion Pax, sometimes he still looks like Optimus Prime, sometimes he looks quite different, sometimes he's a lot smaller. This particular version is quite a bit smaller. It's a smaller figure. He's shorter than Shockwave. You can see he's got a humanoid face. He's got nose and mouth and stuff, so different than the Optimus Prime we're used to. So again, cool set. But my thought process was, not only do I have a really cool Optimus Prime in my collection already, I already have a cool Orion Pax figure in my collection. So I really don't need another Orion Pax, and I think the one that I have is better than this one here. And knowing that basically that half of the set was a complete waste for me, so now I really had to justify getting the Shockwave. And even though it's a cool look, I didn't love the fact that it was based on the Seeker mold. I love the Seeker mold for Seekers, but I just didn't really see it for Shockwave, so I thought I could live without this pack, so I didn't order it. But you might be realizing it's here in my hand. So that's because on Amazon I ordered this pack. So this one, and I don't know if I mentioned it, this one's called Humble Origins. This one's called Rise of Tyranny. And this one features Megatron back when he was in his pre-war mode and he was a miner, like so working in the mines, and that's why he's got like these kind of like caution stickers on him and stuff. He's black instead of white. It was based on the comic book called Megatron Origins, which was really cool. I really liked that storyline. I really liked this look. And this figure was based on the Earthrise Megatron, which I thought was a great mold. So I was like, yeah, I think I kind of need this, because even though I have plenty of Megatrons, I don't have a pre-war Megatron. And then the other character is Ratbat, and this is Senator Ratbat. So if you're familiar with Radbat, it might be from the 80s toy line or 80s comic books or something, where he was basically a little bat that transformed into a cassette tape, and he was one of like Soundwave's little minions that went into his chest and stuff. But I think it was in the Dreamwave comic books, which was the company that had the license for Transformers for a few years before IDW took it over. I think they were the ones that introduced the concept of Ratbat being a humanoid senator at one point before he basically got transformed into that cassette tape bat, having gone through a process similar to Shockwave, where I think somebody wanted to kind of take him down a few pegs, so they turned him into a bat. Anyway, when IDW took the license, they ran with that, and they created their own version of Senator Ratbat. And I really, really wanted this figure. I've always liked Ratbat as a character, but I think he's much more interesting as a humanoid as opposed to a little bat character. So this one was a for sure purchase for me. I ordered this one right away. I didn't want to miss out on it. And I was very excited when I got the ship notice, and I was watching it. It's like, this item is on its way. It's out for delivery. It's coming to your house. I opened up the box, and it was this one. So I was like, okay, I'm sure Amazon would let me return it and probably send me the new one, but that's a bit of a process. I really didn't want to have to go through the trouble of having to go to the post office and box this up. So I just said, you know what? I'm just going to keep this set anyway. I kind of wanted it for the Shockwave, so I kept it. And then with this set, I was going to just order it from Amazon again, but I went online, and apparently it's a widespread problem that Amazon had mixed up the SKUs for these two items. So I think a lot of people that ordered just one of the sets was getting the opposite of what they ordered. So I assume a lot of people probably ordered both, so they wouldn't have even realized there was a mix-up. But even when I go on Amazon's website, and they might have changed it now, but even as of just a couple of days ago, it would show a picture of this, but it would say like the Humble Origins, which is the name of the other pack. So there was still kind of a mix-up, so I didn't trust ordering it from Amazon again. So I had to go to Hasbro Pulse and order it from them, which was fine, except I had to pay for shipping. With Amazon, I had free shipping. So anyway, I got this. It's here. They're both pretty cool sets, so why don't we just take a closer look at all these figures outside of the packaging. So let's start with my least favorite of the quartet. So this here is Orion Pax, and you know, he's a cute little figure. It's like a good face sculpt on him. You can definitely tell that this is, you know, an early version of Optimus Prime with that whole shape of his head / helmet and the colors and everything. Like, he's definitely evokes Optimus Prime in there. And I just don't recall how accurate this is to the comic book. Like, I assume it must be, because they went through the trouble of making it. But I don't know, there's been so many different continuities over the years. Like, I believe Orion Pax was more of a cop in the IDW comic books rather than a data clerk, but that might be true from perhaps the Dreamwave continuity or something. So this is kind of maybe just a mishmash of early Orion Pax. And it's a cool figure. He just seems a little short. I don't mind the fact that Orion Pax is maybe a smaller guy who grows bigger when he becomes the leader of the Autobots, but this guy's just a little too small. Now the body is a retool of the War for Cybertron Hound figure. So here's that figure. So you can see it's quite a bit different. They've changed a lot about it, but it's still got the basic shape. So like the way the head's formed, the way the front folds over, the shoulders, the shape of the arms, the shape of the legs, even though it's got some different paneling and all that stuff on it. This is the base figure. And, you know, this was a great figure for Hound. I actually really like this Hound. In fact, just about an hour ago, before I shot this, they released a new version of, not Hound, it's a different character based on this mold. It's kind of a tan-colored Jeep. And I'm not familiar with that character, and oftentimes I don't buy characters if I'm not really familiar with them, but I like this mold so much, and I thought that looked really cool in that color, so I picked it up. So this mold works for certain characters. I just don't really think it works for Orion Pax, but I don't dislike this figure. He's got a cool little gun, which is similar to the Optimus Prime kind of classic gun. He's also got a little battle axe, which is maybe similar to the axe that Optimus Prime is sometimes seen with. And yeah, he's okay. But as I mentioned earlier, the reason why I didn't really need an Orion Pax is because I already have this one, which I believe was from the Power of the Primes. And this look is much more accurate to the G1 cartoon. So that's the look I associate with Orion Pax. So I really, really like this figure. And what's cool about this guy is he actually can transform, and there's an outer shell that snaps onto him, and he becomes Optimus Prime. But the default Optimus Prime I have in my collection is this War for Cybertron Optimus Prime. So for that reason, I can keep War for Cybertron Prime on my display, and I can keep the Power of the Primes Prime as Orion Pax, so I can keep them both in my display. This guy here, he just doesn't really have a home. He's kind of extra. But yeah, he's okay. Now I wanted to keep Orion around long enough just to do a size comparison, so you can see how much smaller Orion Pax is than Senator Shockwave. It's a little jarring because I think when these guys are in their final form, they're probably about the same size. So it's weird that he's that much shorter than him pre-Optimus Prime. Anyway, we'll get rid of him and we'll focus on Senator Shockwave. So this is a cool design. I like it. I think if I had this toy as a kid, I would probably use it as a whole different character because I wouldn't really know how to integrate it into my playtime. And even as an adult, even though I don't play with my toys, I still kind of have to have a canon in my head type of thing of how everything fits in. And I still kind of view this guy as like he'd be a cool other character, use him as a senator of some sort. But it's still hard for me to think of this as Shockwave because I assume you guys all know what Shockwave looks like. This is the kind of go-to Shockwave in my collection currently. And I'll be honest, this one isn't my favorite. Like I think it's too dark, and his cycloptic eye kind of gets lost in there. I think he's a little small. I'd actually like to see him a little bigger because the vintage toy was quite a bit bigger than this. But this is probably the best Shockwave I have as far as the sculpt and the articulation and everything working together. I actually have the Michael Bay version of him, which I actually think is pretty cool, but it's not very true to his G1 aesthetic. So as far as a G1 Shockwave goes, this is my go-to Shockwave. And it's hard to imagine that this guy becomes this guy. They look like drastically different characters. But it is a cool figure. He moves well articulated. I'm not going to go over all the articulation on these guys. But yeah, he moves really well, and chances are you know exactly how this figure moves because they have released it several times. It started off as Soundwave here, so you can see how they're similar and how they're different. So they've given him like new kind of chest piece. He doesn't have the wings on the side, but the basic construction with these little, whatever you want to call those things there on the side of his head, those are still there. So there's a lot of similarities, but they have changed them around quite a bit. They both kind of have their alt mode just hanging off of the back of them. but his isn't maybe as obvious because of the thrusters there. I can kind of buy into that a little bit more as appropriate for his robot mode, almost like he has a jetpack on, whereas his looks a little bulkier with the wings. But actually, that reminds me. Normally when I do Transformers reviews, I never show you the alt mode. And I don't know, maybe that drives some of you crazy, but I doubt I'm anybody's only stop for Transformer reviews. If you really want a full review of this guy, I'm sure there's some much more hardcore Transformers fans that do a much more in-depth review on their channel. I just kind of give you my basic thoughts and give you a little, kind of a closer look at him. But anyway, this particular set, with both Orion Pax and Shockwave, when I opened up the box, they were in their alt modes. So I did shoot some video of them in their alt modes before I transformed them. So maybe I'll pop that up here now. So you can see that Shockwave, he retains that spaceship look that the Siege Starscream had, except he's not as triangular because he doesn't have the wings out to the side. He's more, I don't know, more of a straightforward, like almost Star Wars looking starship. And then with Orion Pax, he is sort of like a little Jeep. He's just like Hound would be, but they have changed around a little bit. He doesn't look as much like a Jeep, just some sort of all-terrain vehicle. So there you go. I've got some video of them in their alt modes. But anyway, I don't think I have a whole lot more to say about Shockwave. I do think this is a cool figure. I really like the base figure that's based on. I like the color scheme. I love the character of Shockwave. It's just, given the price of the set, I was ready to pass on him. But part of me is kind of glad that I got stuck with him, because he's pretty cool. So now let's take a look at Minor Megatron. And this one I was really excited about. I really like this look for Megatron. Like, it's similar enough to the Megatron we know and love, but it's different enough to make him interesting and make him worthwhile. Like, we don't get too many black Megatrons. He's usually in that kind of flat gray. And here, it's not really jet black. It is kind of just a really darker shade of gray. But with these kind of like caution tape symbols all over him, the red sculpting on his head there. Like, he looks really cool. This is a really great head sculpt. So yeah, solid figure. He's got a pickaxe, which makes sense because he's a miner. He's also got a big drill on his arm, which again makes sense and accurate to the comic book. And this is based off of the Earthrise or Siege. I can't remember which one. We'll just say the War for Cybertron Megatron here. And I love this figure. They released this guy in a couple different versions. There was the original version that had a kind of battle damage on it, and then they did one that was a little more metallic. This one here is the cell-shaded animated look. So you see some of this paint on him is supposed to replicate the look from the cartoon. And I really like this look. This is my favorite of all the versions of this guy. This is an awesome Megatron. I love him as far as the look, the articulation. You know, he's got a little bit of kibble hanging off of him, but again, I think this kind of works for him, having this big backpack. He doesn't have stuff hanging off of his legs or his arms, and there's not really a whole lot of hollow spots. It's just a really solid figure all around. Now, I will say his legs are a little loose. When I was holding him just now, he kind of fell backwards, but I've never thought of that as a problem with this figure. If you would ask me about this figure, I never would have even thought to mention his legs are a little bit loose. However, this version, his legs are terrible. Now, I don't know if it's across the board or maybe I just got unlucky, but it really sucks and it kind of ruins the figure to some degree. This figure cannot stand up. He cannot support his own weight. The only reason I've got him standing up here at all right now is because I have two big blobs of stick tack kind of jamming up the back of the legs. And even then, it's kind of fighting against the stick tack. But you'll see, if I take that out of there, he is going to just crumble, which is really disappointing. Because like I said, this wasn't a cheap figure. I felt safe buying it because this figure here I don't really have any problem with. But as soon as I put... he's going to make me a liar. But yeah, like his legs are so loose. Like, there's really no resistance with that at all. As soon as I took him out of the box, he just started falling down like that. So, yeah, it's really annoying. So, It kind of sucks, but I'm going to have to jam that stick tack or find some other solution on the back of his knees, and that's how he's going to be displayed on my collection. Now, at least it's kind of hidden pretty well. You guys didn't notice it there until I told you. But, yeah, it's a little frustrating. I really think Hasbro should do better. Hopefully, it's just a one-off on my Megatron and not on yours. But, anyway. Cool figure, cool-looking figure. And, yeah, you can kind of see... I don't think they changed this guy as much as they changed the Shockwave as far as retooling goes. He's got a lot of the same parts. It's mostly the paint job. Although the head sculpt, it's worth noting the heads are different. Like, this is a very classic Megatron. They didn't just repaint that. Like, he's got a different shape to his head and everything. So I think that head sculpt is unique for this figure. So yeah, I really, really like it. But, and before I had opened it up, I thought this could even be a contender for my best of the year list just because I really love this figure already. And this is a really cool paint job. But yeah, this really takes him down a few pegs. So anyway, let's move on to my favorite figure of these sets. So this here is Senator Ratbat. And he is a very cool figure. I like this guy a lot. This design is just really great. Like, he kind of retains the look, almost like you can see his face looking out of Ratbat's head, like what you would associate Ratbat as the bat. Like, his fangs are kind of come down. It looks like the bottom. Under his chin kind of looks like the jaw. This visor is kind of like Ratbat's eyes. So, I don't know. It's very cool. I love that look. You know, it looked so great in the comic books, and I think they were able to translate it very well into toy form. And what's even more impressive is just how much this is a retool of the Studio Series Scourge and Sweeps figure. Now, I actually don't have that figure as a comparison, but that looked like a pretty cool figure. It's just I'm not a big fan of Scourge, so I didn't really feel the need to buy him when he came out. But the fact that this figure is based on another character, it was built for another character, it's amazing how well it works for this Senator Ratbat figure. You know, he's got some kibble on the back too, but I don't think it looks bad. It kind of works for him. It looks like he's got like kind of bat wings or almost like a Dracula cape or something, which really works, I think, for the character. The colors are really sharp. Really nice purple with the black with just a little pop of gold on there. This guy is definitely a contender for my best of the year list. This may be my favorite Transformer that I've gotten so far this year. It's just, it's really cool. And he's got a bit of a bump for me just because he is a G1 character. And since I started buying Transformers as an adult collector around 2005 or so, when the Generations or the Classics line first started, Radbat is one of these characters that I've never gotten an updated version of. So I haven't had a Radbat since the one I had that turned into a cassette tape when I was a kid. So he's been a hole in my collection. I would have been happy to get just a Ratbat cassette, but to get a cool looking Senator Ratbat like this, yeah, this is really cool. I love this figure. Okay, now I should mention, when I ordered that Rise of Tyranny pack from Hasbro Pulse, and I was going to have to pay for shipping, even though I was kind of in a bit of a tight financial situation and I really shouldn't have been shopping for things that I didn't need. When it comes to buying things from places like Pulse, and I'm going to have to pay $30 shipping for one item anyway, it's kind of better if you buy 2 or 3 items because the shipping doesn't really go up that much. And in my mind, I can justify it like, okay, well, that $30 shipping is now spread out over 2 or 3 figures, and it makes it a lot more easier to stomach and rationalize, even though I'm technically spending more money in the long run. But anyway, I thought I would try and find anything on the website that I could buy that didn't feel like a waste of money. But there was nothing on the website that I knew that I was like dying to get, because I'm not very patient. I usually do buy things as soon as they come out. But I went through there and I saw this character, Devcon, and I hadn't planned on buying this guy. But as I was going through the website and looking at him, I was like, you know what? I don't know much about this character. I had to kind of look him up on Transformers Wiki, and apparently he was like a bounty hunter character that appeared in, I think, just a single episode of the cartoon in the 80s. I don't remember that episode. I watched them all as a kid. I own most of them on DVD now, but I haven't watched most of them in years and years and years. But knowing this guy was from a cartoon and a character that hasn't had a toy before, and just the look of him, I dig the look of Transformers that appeared in the cartoon that weren't based on toys. You saw it a lot when they would do flashbacks to like pre-war Cybertron with, you'd see Orion Pax and Alita 1 and all that stuff. I found that the people that designed the Transformers that weren't based on a toy, they had a different look to them because they weren't as boxy, because they probably didn't have to actually figure out how it would all work to transform. So they had kind of just a unique look to them. And I thought it was kind of weird as a kid that the characters that were original in the cartoon didn't really match up with the designs of characters that were based on existing toys. But over the years, I've kind of come to really appreciate that aesthetic, and it makes me kind of nostalgic. And I'd like to see more of these kind of cartoon characters that didn't get toys in the past get toys now. So I thought, you know what? He's a cool looking character. I'm going to take a chance on Devcon, and I'm glad I did. He's pretty cool. So why don't we take a closer look at him? So here's a closer look at Devcon. Now, before I talk too much about him, I want to mention, so when I talked about Radbat a moment ago, I said that the figure was based off of the Studio Series Scourge, which I do not have. And I think I may have said that it was the first Ratbat figure. But anyway, there was a previous humanoid Ratbat that was based off of the Scourge mold from the Scourge like Generations set. So I do have the Scourge from Generations. So this figure here, this guy is several years old, like the mid 2000s or so. I really like this figure. I think it captures Scourge really well. And he's a character that, he's not one of my favorites, so every time they release a new version of him, I don't feel the need to upgrade him. So I'm still pretty content with this version, even though the Studio Series one looked really good. So what's interesting to note about this Scourge figure, though, is this is the figure that had previously been redone into a Senator Ratbat figure, which I was never able to get, but I always wanted. So it's just interesting that he was the base of Ratbat. And I know I did just say a moment ago that Devcon, this is the first ever figure of him. But actually, I'm shooting these inserts a couple of days after I shot the earlier footage. And I looked him up on Transformers Wiki and found out that there actually was a previous version of Devcon that was part of a BotCon exclusive. And for the previous Devcon, they actually used this exact same Scourge figure. So this figure here was the base of the previous Devcon and the previous Senator Ratbat. So anyway, it's kind of interesting that they would think to go with Scourge to make this character. And this time around, they didn't. Instead, they've used Studio Series Blur. And looking at the animation model, I think Blur works better. Like, I can definitely see Blur in this figure. But again, he has been retooled, and I think this works. So it's just interesting that they didn't choose Blur the first time around. But yeah, I really like this guy. So yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about him, I don't think. Nice colors, the blue and red look good together. I like this weapon he's got, this kind of multi-barreled gun. I like his rounded design, as I mentioned earlier. It kind of works for characters that were made for the animation specifically, because other characters were a little blockier. But yeah, I think they pulled it off quite nicely. He transforms into kind of a little spaceship-y thing. Yeah, cool character, cool toy. I'm glad I picked him up. Now, another figure that I got from Hasbro Pulse recently is another Seeker Jet. Now, I am a sucker for Seeker Jet repaints. When I was a kid, there was 6 Seekers: Starscream, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Thrust, Dirge, and Ramjet. Now, as a kid, I would have loved to have all 6 of them. I didn't. I only had Thrust, so he's my favorite one. But over the years, as I've collected newer versions of Transformers, I've always wanted to have a complete matching set of 6, and I've never quite gotten there. I maybe get 4 or 5, but then I miss out on one, and then they change the design slightly. So I might have a team of 6, but one of them looks a little off. And anyway, in this modern kind of the War for Cybertron trilogy that we got just a couple of years ago, which started with like Siege and Earthrise and Kingdom. I really like those Seeker Jet designs, and I have most of the original 6. In fact, I have all of them, but a couple of them I have repaints, and they don't quite feel genuine. Like I have Ramjet, version 2, and I need Ramjet version 1. I need the white Ramjet, not the purple Ramjet. Anyway, so not only do I have those 6, but they've released a ton of other characters. Some of them were background characters in the cartoon. So who else do I have? I have like Sandstorm, I have Hot Link, I have Red Wing, like all these new Seeker Jets. And even though they're just repaints, I'm a sucker for them. I'd love to see them just keep expanding the army. I love getting new Seekers. So this Seeker here, I believe, is a brand new character. So not based on any pre-existing lore. Sometimes Hasbro finds these characters that were maybe miscolored in the background of one panel of a comic book or one frame of the cartoon. That's where some of the other Seeker Jets have come from. I don't think this guy was based on anything like that. I think he's just an original creation. His name is Cloudcover. So this is the first ever figure of him. And he's based on the cone head design. The Seekers have basically 2 designs. There's the one with the little like the cone head and the one without the cone head that looks more like Starscream. And I really like the cone head design because, as I said, Thrust was my favorite Seeker. He was a cone head. So, I was really excited to get a new cone head Seeker. What sucked, though, is that he was a Hasbro Pulse exclusive. And I ordered him through Hasbro Pulse. And the shipping on him was, like I said, about $30. The figure, I think, was about $60 Canadian. So, was he worth it? This is just a repaint of a character I already have a few times over, and it cost me like $90. It's hard to justify that. I wish it had been available that I could have ordered him with a few other things, as I did with Devcon and the Ratbat set. But, and sometimes what I do is I pre-order something from Hasbro, and they don't charge you until it comes in stock. So if I pre-order something like him, and then he hasn't come in stock yet, and then something else comes up for pre-order that I want, I will pre-order that other item and pre-order him again, and then I'll go cancel the order that I had where he was alone, and the shipping gets combined, and it works out well. Now, unfortunately, with this figure, there was no other items. Well, that's not quite true. Other items had come out, but this figure was sold out on the website, so I couldn't risk canceling my order and buying it again because it wasn't available. So I had to just kind of suck it up. They shipped it to me last week. So I paid a lot of money for this guy. I know exactly what I'm getting because, like I said, it's just a repaint of the Thrust figure, the Ramjet figure, the Dirge figure that I already have. But he's cool. I love the color scheme. So why don't we take a closer look at him? So here is Cloudcover. And as I mentioned earlier, I shot the video of me sitting in my chair talking to you guys a couple of days ago. And I have done a little bit of extra research before I sat down to do these close-ups. And Cloudcover is not a completely original idea that came out of nowhere. When I go to Transformers Wiki and read up on this guy, apparently there was kind of a cloud camouflage version of Ramjet that people had, I guess it had been known to exist, but it was maybe never intended to be released for sale. Maybe it was a prototype. Maybe it was going to be part of Generation 2. I don't know, but apparently it was from a Hasbro employee's personal collection, and I don't know, it made the rounds perhaps on the internet. So pictures of a version 1 Ramjet from the 80s in a kind of a blue and white camo color with these same like yellow check boxes and stuff, that did exist. So that's what this figure is based on. It's based on something. Anyway, that figure was never really released, so this is going to be the first chance pretty much everybody in the world has to own this color scheme for a Seeker Jet. And yeah, he's pretty cool. You've seen this mold probably many times by now, so there's not a whole lot to say. It's a really cool mode. It's the Earthrise design. So I pair these figures with my Siege Seekers like Starscream. But the thing with Starscream, which is the mold that Senator Shockwave is based on, they transform into Cybertronian jets. When it comes to my cone heads, since they're the Earthrise design, they all transform into Earth jets, like F-14s or F-15s or whatever they are. So that's cool, but again, it keeps my collection it keeps it from being completely cohesive. I said earlier how I want to have a set of at least the 6 primary Seekers all match up. I still don't, because I've got half of them as Cybertronian, half of them as Earthjets, but whatever. Anyway, so this is a great mold. It's been released several times. The camo is kind of weird because it's not really airbrushed to look like clouds, which is kind of what I thought when I initially saw this figure online. And it doesn't really match up with the kind of prototype or whatever that it's based on either. So it's inspired by it, but it's kind of its own thing. Now, I did say that the cone heads are basically all repaints of one another. They're not quite. Like, here is Thrust, my favorite of the Seeker Jets. And you'll notice they have different wings. So Thrust wings are up here on his back, whereas his are down on his feet. But other than that, the molds are pretty much the same. Now, this figure, since it's based on a Ramjet figure, I do have a Ramjet here. Now, as I was kind of complaining about earlier, this is Generation 2 Ramjet in purple. The Generation 1 Ramjet, which is the one I grew up on as a kid, was white and black. I don't have one of those in my collection. I would really like to get this guy in white and black. And besides him, the other core Conehead Seeker, and it's hard to get these guys all posed together, is Dirge. Now, one thing that's different about Dirge from the other Seeker Jets, because him and Ramjet are pretty much the same, except you'll notice he's got a closed mouth, and he's got a yelling mouth. So with Cloudcover here, they have gone with the yelling mouth. So I guess if I was going to say this was a repaint of anybody, it's most closely, I don't know, he's got Dirge's head, but their wings are different. He's got Ramjet's wings. So yeah, this guy's just kind of a mishmash of everybody. While I've got these guys here, I might as well bring out my one other Conehead, which is Sandstorm or Desert Storm. I can't remember what his name is. But yeah, so I've got a nice little squad of Coneheads now. I love all these guys. If they keep releasing this figure in different colors, I'll keep buying it. But yeah, I am glad I got this guy. I think he's perhaps the most striking of the bunch here. I really like that blue and white, and that yellow just really pops on the figure and makes him interesting. So yeah, I would recommend this guy. Okay, I've got one more Transformer to show you. So I said in the introduction of this video that I only really collect Generation 1 Transformers. Now, when Generation 1 existed back in the 80s, they didn't call it Generation 1, it was just Transformers. However, Transformers kind of ran its course in the 80s. It kind of petered out. They stopped making toys. The cartoon went off the air. And just a couple of years later, Hasbro tried to reboot it. They didn't create new episodes of the cartoon, but what they did is they re-aired the old cartoon, and they re-released some old toys with new paint schemes, and they called that Generation 2. Now, I think probably a lot of fans consider Generation 2 to be kind of part of Generation 1 because it is those same characters, it's the same storyline, but technically when Generation 2 came around, that's when Generation 1 got its name of G1. So anyway, I didn't collect any of the G2 toys when they came out back in the day because I was like a teenager and I was kind of over it. They were just repaints of toys that I already had, so whatever. Anyway, Hasbro now is starting to release some new toys based on the Generation 2 paint schemes. So they're not as well known. So Hasbro's releasing these G2 colored toys, and that's pretty cool. I don't plan on buying many of them because, like I said, I probably already have the G1 version in my collection, and I don't buy every single thing that comes out. But one of my favorite toys in the kind of modern Transformers line that came out in the Siege Earthrise line was Sideswipe, who was the red sports car. You can actually see him. He's right up there in the corner there. I'll do a little side-by-side so you'll see him close up in a minute. But I love that Sideswipe toy. I think he's just so well executed. He moves well. He looks great. And they've re-released him in a couple of different color schemes. So I have a black one, a blue one, a yellow one. He's basically the same build as Red Alert. So Red Alert is kind of a re-release of him. And then so is... there was a white one. Anyway, I love that mold, and I will probably buy it in every color they put it out in, just like with the Secret Jets. So there is a new Sideswipe. Now they call him Generation 2 Sideswipe. However, in the 90s, a Sideswipe with this paint job never came out. It was, I guess, a prototype. They were going to release a Generation 2 Sideswipe with this kind of crazy paint job. They didn't. They went with something a little more toned down. But yeah, this time around Hasbro's going with that unreleased prototype. And because it's so kind of, the color scheme is kind of so gaudy and loud, they're calling the subset of Transformers it Toxitron. So I'm not quite sure the background of Toxitron, but I think it's kind of ties into the fact that a lot of toys in the 90s had bright colors, like the Toxic Crusaders, the Ninja Turtles, and there was always this element of kind of like ooze and slime and all that stuff. So I think that's why these really bright Transformers are being called Toxitron. I don't know. Anyway, they're Walmart exclusives. I was in Walmart the other day. I saw the whole wave of them. There was like 4 figures, and I was really tempted to grab them all. But again, money's a little tight right now, so I was like, I'm only going to grab Sideswipe. So this is the Toxitron Generation 2 Sideswipe. The other characters, there was a Jazz, which was all orange. I don't need that. There was also a character that transforms into a motorcycle. I'm not familiar with that character, so I don't need that one. But I do regret passing on the Mirage. The Mirage was like neon green and pink, and it was just really striking. And I've been to Walmart 3 or 4 times since I saw it and passed up on him, and I haven't seen him again. I haven't seen any of the Toxitron figures, so I must have been lucky and stepped into Walmart just after they unpacked a box when I grabbed this guy. And yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself for not grabbing Mirage when I could have. But yeah, he is available online on Hasbro's website, so maybe I'll grab him eventually. But anyway, the only figure I have to talk about from the Toxitron wave is Sideswipe here, so why don't we take a closer look at him. So here is a closer look at Generation 2 Sideswipe, and it's a great figure. I've loved this figure since I first got it, and it holds up despite all the weird paint jobs. And this is a really weird paint job. Like, I think the head is the weirdest thing about it, how it's blue on blue. Every other version of this figure has had two-toned head, like so a black outer shell with like a silver face. It makes him look particularly alien, I think, having the blue on blue and those white eyes. It makes him look a little creepy almost. And then the paint job with that like cloudy sunset or whatever there, and that design kind of carries over onto these panels on his doors here. I don't know, it's very 80s looking to me, even though this would have been a G2 design intended for the 90s. It makes me think of some of those like early Sega games or something. What is it? Outrun, the car game where you're driving along on a very flat surface. This design of the car, that's what makes me think of some old Sega game like Outrun. And it's cool. I really like that blue and that yellow with the orange. Like, it's kind of a loud color scheme. It maybe shouldn't work, but it does. He's even got the blue wheels and everything. The paint there, it almost looks kind of airbrushed, the way it just kind of fades in and fades out. It's a cool design. I like it. Even the blue on the glass makes for kind of a strange design. So I really like him. Now, as I said, I first got this figure when it came out as the original Sideswipe color scheme. So this was in the Siege line. Very cool. They re-released him as a different character called Deep Cover. And they actually put out 2 versions of Deep Cover. So I've got the black and the blue. And then they released another version of this guy as a different character. So this is Tiger Track. And he's just solid yellow. So these guys are all like straight repaints of one another. But another toy that is kind of the same tool is Red Alert. Now what's interesting with Red Alert is, you notice like on the front of him, he still has this little kind of, I don't know what you call it, kind of like a grill design, you know, just like we see on Sideswipe. The real difference between Sideswipe and Red Alert is the head shape. So you notice he's got these little kind of like rounded ears, where he's got these like pointy kind of triangular ears. So even though these guys are all supposed to be different characters, so it would have made more sense to change them up. These guys are all like identical clones of one another, but when it comes to Sideswipe version 2, which is supposed to be the same character as this guy, they gave him Red Alert's head, which is interesting. So it's got the kind of rounder ears instead of the pointy ears. And you'll also notice he is lacking the kind of striped grille on the front of his car too. So he's got some different parts from Sideswipe version 1. But these guys all kind of belong in the same family. It's a great base figure. And just like with the Seekers, I will probably continue to buy this one, no matter how many colors they put out there. Okay, so that is a review of my new Transformers figures. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe. And, leave me comments below. It's always nice to hear from you guys. So, I guess that's it. I'll sign off. Stay tuned. There'll be more videos up very soon. And until then, ciao.